The sound of breaking glass shattered the morning silence in White River, Arizona territory, and Zachary York knew his life was about to change forever, though he could not have guessed it would be because of a woman humming an old Irish tune while washing dishes in his dead mother's kitchen. He stood in the doorway of the ranch house he had inherited 3 months prior, his boots still dusty from the long ride back from Tucson, where he had been selling cattle. The place looked different somehow, cleaner perhaps, and there was smoke rising from the chimney despite the fact that he had left the house cold and empty 5 days ago. His hand instinctively moved toward the revolver at his hip, but then he heard it, soft and melodic, a woman's voice humming a tune that made his chest tighten with a memory so old and precious he had almost forgotten it existed. Zachary moved quietly across the porch, his spurs jingling softly despite his attempt at stealth. Through the window, he could see her, a young woman with dark auburn hair piled loosely on her head, wearing a simple blue dress with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her hands moved in soapy water in the basin, and she was humming, completely unaware of his presence. The tune was one his mother used to sing when he was a boy, an old Irish ballad about a girl waiting for her love to return from the sea. He had not heard it in 15 years, not since his mother had died when he was 12 years old. He pushed open the door, and the woman spun around, her wet hands sending droplets of water across the wooden floor. Her eyes were wide and startled, a deep green that reminded him of the valleys after spring rain. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, with a strong jawline and a spattering of freckles across her nose and cheeks. She looked to be in her early 20s, perhaps 22 or 23, and there was something fierce and independent in the way she held herself despite the obvious fear in her eyes. "Who are you?" They both said at the same time, and despite the tension of the moment, Zachary felt the corner of his mouth twitch with the urge to smile. The woman recovered first, wiping her hands on her apron. "I asked first, mister, and you are the one who just walked into a house where I have been living for the past 3 days. Living?" Zachary stepped fully into the house, closing the door behind him. "This is my house. I inherited it from my mother, Margaret York, though she has been gone many years now." The woman's face went pale, and she reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. "Margaret York. This was Margaret's house. You knew my mother." Zachary moved closer, studying her face for any sign of deception. "No, I never met her, but my mother did. My mother was Bridget Lawson, and she and your mother grew up together in County Cork before they both came to America. My mother used to tell me stories about Margaret, about how they had promised to always look after each other's children if anything ever happened to either of them." Zachary felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He moved to the table and sat down heavily in one of the chairs his father had made before he died in a mining accident when Zachary was only 8. "Bridget Lawson. My mother spoke of her often. She said Bridget was like a sister to her. What happened? Why are you here?" The woman sat down across from him, her hands folded on the table. "My name is Olivia Lawson. My mother died 2 months ago of fever. Before she passed, she told me about your mother and about this place. She said if I ever needed help, if I ever needed somewhere to go, I should come to White River and find Margaret York. I did not know she had passed. I arrived 3 days ago and found the house empty. I thought perhaps you had moved away, and I took the liberty of making myself at home. I am sorry for the intrusion." Her voice was steady, but Zachary could see the tremor in her hands, the way her throat worked as she swallowed hard. She was alone in the world, just as he was. "You have nothing to apologize for. My mother would have welcomed you with open arms, and I will do the same. You are welcome to stay here as long as you need." Olivia's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back quickly. "That is very kind of you, Mr. York, but I cannot impose on your hospitality without earning my keep. I am a hard worker. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend a garden. I can help with whatever you need. Just Zachary, please, and I will not turn away the daughter of my mother's oldest friend. This house has been empty too long anyway. It needs life in it again." They stared at each other across the table, and Zachary felt something shift in his chest, a warmth he had not felt in years. It was not just her beauty, though she was indeed lovely. It was the tune she had been humming, the connection to his mother, the way she held herself with dignity despite her obvious vulnerability. It was everything about her, and he knew in that moment that he was in serious danger of losing his heart to this woman he had just met. Over the following days, they fell into an easy routine. Zachary would rise before dawn and work the ranch, tending to the cattle and horses, mending fences, and doing the 100 other tasks that came with running a small ranch in the Arizona territory. Olivia would prepare breakfast before he left, and when he returned in the evening, there would be a hot meal waiting and the house would be filled with the smells of fresh bread and whatever she had cooked that day. She had a gift for making even simple ingredients taste wonderful, and Zachary found himself looking forward to the evenings more than he had looked forward to anything in a long time. But it was not just the food that drew him back to the house each evening. It was Olivia herself, the way she moved through the rooms as though she belonged there, the sound of her voice when she talked about her mother and the life she had left behind in New Mexico territory, where she had been living before her mother died. She spoke of the small adobe house where they had lived, of the garden her mother had tended, of the pain of watching the woman who had raised her fade away day by day, until there was nothing left but memories and an old promise about a friend in Arizona. One evening, about 2 weeks after Zachary had found her in his kitchen, he came home to find her sitting on the porch with a guitar in her lap. She was singing the same tune she had been humming that first day, but now there were words, beautiful haunting words about love and loss and the eternal hope of reunion. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps and listened, completely mesmerized. Her voice was not perfect or trained, but it was honest and true, filled with emotion that made his throat tighten and his eyes burn. When she finished, she looked up and saw him standing there. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "Where did you learn that song?" "My mother taught it to me." She said your mother taught it to her when they were girls in Ireland. It was one of the few things from the old country that she carried with her all her life. Zachary climbed the steps and sat down beside her on the bench his father had built. "My mother used to sing that to me when I was small, when I could not sleep or when I was sick. I had forgotten it until I heard you humming it that first day. It brought everything back, all the memories I thought I had lost." Olivia set the guitar aside and turned to face him. She must have been a wonderful woman. She was, strong and kind and full of laughter, even when times were hard. "My father died when I was 8, and she kept this ranch going through sheer force of will. She worked harder than any man I have ever known. When she died, I was sent to live with my uncle in Tucson. He was not a kind man, but he taught me about cattle and horses and how to survive in this territory. When I turned 18, I left and joined a cattle drive north to Montana. I spent years working on different ranches, learning everything I could. When my uncle died, he left me this place, though I had not seen him in years. I came back 6 months ago, and I have been trying to make something of it ever since." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sun set over the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and deep purple. Zachary was acutely aware of how close Olivia was sitting, of the warmth of her body beside him, of the faint scent of lavender that seemed to cling to her hair and skin. "Zachary," she said softly, and he loved the way his name sounded in her voice. "I need to tell you something. I have been here 2 weeks now, and I have saved almost nothing. I need to start thinking about my future, about what I am going to do. I cannot live on your charity forever." He felt a stab of panic at the thought of her leaving. "What are you thinking of doing?" "There is a schoolhouse in town that needs a teacher. I went into White River yesterday when you were working the south pasture, and I spoke with the town council. They offered me the position. It does not pay much, but it would be enough for me to rent a room at the boarding house and support myself." "No." The word came out more forcefully than he intended, and Olivia looked at him in surprise. He took a breath and tried again. "I mean, you do not need to leave. You are welcome to stay here as long as you want. You have already done so much for this place for me. The house has not been this clean or well kept in years. I have not eaten this well since my mother was alive. Please stay. People will talk, Zachary. A man and a woman living under the same roof, unmarried, it is not proper. Let them talk. I do not care what the gossips in town say." Olivia smiled, but there was sadness in it. "You say that now, but it will matter eventually. Your reputation matters if you want to do business in this territory. And my reputation, such as it is, would be destroyed. No respectable man would ever want to marry me." The thought of Olivia marrying some other man made Zachary's stomach twist with jealousy. "Then marry me." The words hung in the air between them, and Zachary could not believe he had just said them, even though he knew with absolute certainty that he meant them. Olivia stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you say? Marry me, Olivia?" "I know it is sudden, and I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. From the moment I heard you humming that song, I felt something change inside me. You brought life back into this house, into me. I have been alone for so long, just going through the motions of living without really feeling anything. But when I am with you, I feel alive again. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to come home every evening to your smile and your cooking and the sound of your voice. I want to build a life with you, a real life, a family. Please say yes." Olivia's eyes filled with tears, and for a terrible moment, Zachary thought she was going to say no. But then she reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I cannot believe this is happening," she whispered. "I came here with nothing, just a few possessions in a bag and a promise from a woman I never met. I thought I would be alone forever. And now you are asking me to marry you, and I know I should say it is too soon, that we need more time, but I do not want to wait. I feel it too, Zachary. I felt it that first day when you walked through the door. I was terrified and alone, and then there you were, and something inside me just knew. I knew you were going to be important to me. I knew my life was about to change. Is that a yes?" She laughed through her tears and nodded. "Yes, it is a yes. I will marry you, Zachary York." He pulled her into his arms and held her close, feeling her heart beating against his chest. He had not held a woman like this in years, had not allowed himself to care for anyone this way, but with Olivia it felt natural and right, as though she had always been meant to be in his arms. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in White River. The town had been surprised by the sudden engagement, and there had been some talk, but the minister, Reverend Samuel Foster, had been a friend of Zachary's mother and was happy to perform the ceremony. Olivia wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself from fabric they had bought in town, and Zachary wore his best suit, the one he had bought in Tucson for his uncle's funeral and had not worn since. There were not many guests, just a few neighboring ranchers and their wives. some of the town merchants, and the schoolchildren that Olivia had been tutoring in the evenings to earn extra money. She had decided not to take the teaching position after all, choosing instead to help Zachary build up the ranch. She had a good head for numbers, and had already started organizing his accounts and making plans for expanding their cattle herd. After the ceremony, there was a small reception at the ranch. The neighbors had brought food and drink, and there was music and dancing in the yard. Zachary watched Olivia as she moved among their guests, thanking them for coming, laughing at something old Mrs. Henderson said, helping young Tommy Fletcher get a piece of cake. She was radiant, her face glowing with happiness, and Zachary felt a surge of love so strong it almost overwhelmed him. As the sun began to set and the guests started to leave, Zachary and Olivia stood together on the porch, waving goodbye. When the last wagon had disappeared down the road, Olivia turned to him and smiled. "Hello, husband. Hello, wife." She laughed and wrapped her arms around his waist. "That sounds so strange. I am a wife now, I have a husband. You have me for the rest of your life. I hope you do not regret this." "Never," she said firmly. "I could never regret this." They went inside and Zachary carried her over the threshold as tradition demanded. She laughed and clung to him, and when he set her down in the middle of the kitchen, she pulled him close and kissed him. It was not their first kiss. They had shared a few tentative kisses during their brief engagement, but this was different. This was the kiss of a wife for her husband, full of promise and passion, and the beginning of something new. That night, as they lay together in the bedroom that had once belonged to Zachary's parents, Olivia traced the scars on his chest, remnants of a life spent working with animals and barbed wire and all the dangers of ranch life. "Tell me about Montana," she said softly. "You said you went on a cattle drive there. What was it like?" Zachary pulled her closer, enjoying the feel of her soft body against his. "It was hard and beautiful at the same time. We drove 2,000 head north and it took us 4 months. I was 18 and thought I knew everything, but that drive taught me how much I still had to learn. We faced storms and stampedes, crossed rivers that looked impossible to cross, lost cattle to wolves and rustlers. But at night, when we would camp under the stars, it felt like we were the only people in the world. The sky was so big and so full of stars it made you realize how small you really are. Do you miss it? The traveling, the adventure, sometimes, but I do not miss the loneliness. When you are on the trail, you are surrounded by men, but you are still alone in all the ways that matter. I always knew I wanted to come back here eventually, to settle down and build something lasting. I just did not know I was waiting for you." Olivia kissed his chest, right over his heart. "I am glad you waited. I am glad we found each other." They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Zachary learned that Olivia had wanted to be a singer when she was young, but her mother had discouraged it, saying it was not a practical way to make a living. Olivia learned that Zachary had always wanted siblings, but his mother had been unable to have more children after him. They talked about their plans for the ranch, about the children they hoped to have, about the life they wanted to build together. As the weeks turned into months, they fell into the rhythm of married life. Zachary taught Olivia how to ride a horse properly, and she proved to be a natural horsewoman, fearless and skilled. She taught him how to read and write better than the rudimentary skills he had learned as a boy, and she introduced him to books and poetry that opened up new worlds for him. They worked together to improve the ranch, building new corrals, planting a larger garden, even adding a room onto the house that would eventually become a nursery. Their nearest neighbors, the Hendersons, became good friends. Samuel Henderson was a gruff man in his 50s who had been ranching in the territory for 30 years. His wife, Martha, was a kind woman who took Olivia under her wing and taught her the finer points of preserving food and managing a ranch household. They had 4 grown sons who worked on their ranch, and they often came over to help Zachary with larger projects in exchange for help when they needed it. One evening in late autumn, about 6 months after the wedding, Olivia called Zachary in from the barn where he had been working. He came into the kitchen to find her sitting at the table with a strange expression on her face, something between joy and fear. "What is wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing is wrong. At least I do not think it is. Zachary, I am with child. Martha helped me figure it out this afternoon. She said all the signs are there, and I think she is right. We are going to have a baby." Zachary felt the room spin around him. A baby. He was going to be a father. The joy that flooded through him was so intense he could barely speak. He pulled Olivia up from the chair and into his arms, holding her as gently as though she were made of glass. "Are you happy?" she asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Happy? Olivia, I am beyond happy. I cannot even find the words. A baby, our baby." She pulled back to look up at him, and he could see the tears streaming down her face. "I was so worried you would not want this yet, that it was too soon." "Too soon? We are married, we love each other, and we are going to have a child. There is nothing too soon about any of that. This is everything I ever wanted. You are everything I ever wanted." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and Zachary would sit with her for hours, holding her hair back and wiping her face with cool cloths, feeling helpless and desperate to take away her pain. But as the months passed and her belly grew round with their child, she bloomed with health and happiness. She continued to work as much as she could, though Zachary tried to make her rest more. "I am pregnant, not dying," she would say with exasperation when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry or weeding the garden. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while still doing their work." "Not my wife," he would reply stubbornly. "My wife is going to rest and take care of herself." They would argue about it, but it was never a serious argument. Zachary knew Olivia needed to feel useful, and Olivia knew Zachary was only trying to protect her because he loved her. They would compromise, and Olivia would do lighter work while Zachary took on more of the household chores in addition to his ranch work. In early spring, when the desert was beginning to bloom with wildflowers and the weather was warm but not yet scorching, Olivia went into labor. Martha Henderson came to help, along with the doctor from White River, an elderly man named Dr. Benjamin Cross, who had been delivering babies in the territory for 40 years. Zachary was not allowed in the room during the birth, which frustrated him to no end. He paced the length of the porch for hours, listening to Olivia cry out in pain and feeling utterly useless. Samuel Henderson sat with him, smoking his pipe and trying to keep him calm. "First baby is always the hardest," Samuel said, "but Martha says your wife is strong. She will be fine, and so will the baby." "How can you know that? What if something goes wrong?" "Then Dr. Cross will handle it. He is a good man and a good doctor. You have to have faith, Zachary." Finally, just as the sun was setting, Zachary heard the sound he had been waiting for, the sharp, angry cry of a newborn baby. He rushed to the door, but Martha stopped him. "Give us just a few more minutes. Let us clean up the baby and make sure Olivia is comfortable." Those few minutes felt like hours, but finally Martha opened the door and smiled at him. "Come meet your son." A son. He had a son. Zachary walked into the bedroom in a daze. Olivia was propped up against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale and exhausted, but she was smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket, and as Zachary approached, she pulled the blanket back to reveal a small red face with a shock of dark hair. "Meet your son," she whispered. "Meet Zachary Michael York. You named him after me, after you and my father. His middle name was Michael. I hope that is all right." Zachary sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at his son, at this tiny perfect person that he and Olivia had created together. The baby's eyes were closed and his little fists were curled up near his face. He was so small, so fragile, and Zachary felt a wave of fierce protectiveness wash over him. "He is perfect," Zachary said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are perfect. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for this gift." She reached up and touched his face. "We made him together." "You do not need to thank me. This is our family now, the three of us." Dr. Cross assured them that both mother and baby were healthy before he left, and Martha stayed for a few more hours to help and to show Zachary how to hold the baby properly. When everyone had finally gone home and it was just the three of them, Zachary sat in the rocking chair his father had made, holding his son and watching Olivia sleep. The baby was asleep too, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath, and Zachary marveled at how something so small could completely transform his entire world. The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Young Zachary, whom they called Little Zach to distinguish him from his father, was a hungry baby who woke frequently during the night. Olivia would nurse him while Zachary sat beside her, and they would talk quietly in the darkness about their hopes for their son, about the kind of man they wanted him to become. During the day, Zachary would work the ranch while Olivia cared for the baby, but he would come in frequently to check on them, to hold his son for a few minutes, or to give Olivia a break. As little Zach grew, he became more alert and aware of the world around him. He would watch his father with solemn dark eyes, and he would smile when Olivia sang to him. She sang the old Irish songs her mother had taught her, the same ones Zachary's mother had sung, and Zachary loved to listen to her voice filling the house with music. When little Zach was 6 months old, they held a small celebration at the ranch. The Hendersons came, along with several other neighboring families, and they all admired the baby and brought small gifts. It was a happy day, and as Zachary watched Olivia show off their son to their friends, he felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. This was his life now, his family, his home, and he would do anything to protect it. The years passed in a blur of hard work and simple joys. Little Zach grew into a sturdy, curious toddler who followed his father around the ranch and tried to help with every task. Olivia became pregnant again when little Zach was 2, and this time she gave birth to a daughter they named Rose Margaret, after the wild roses that grew near the creek and after Zachary's mother. Rose was a quiet baby, content to watch the world with her mother's green eyes, and she had her father wrapped around her little finger from the moment she was born. Zachary expanded the ranch gradually, buying more cattle and more land as they could afford it. Olivia managed their finances with skill, making sure they saved for lean times and never overextended themselves. They built a new barn and added more rooms to the house as their family grew. When Rose was 3 and little Zach was 5, Olivia gave birth to another son they named Thomas Samuel, after Zachary's father and their friend Samuel Henderson. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that killed their grazing land and made water scarce. There were hard winters when they lost cattle to cold and wolves. There were times when money was tight, and they had to make difficult decisions about what to spend and what to save. But through it all, Zachary and Olivia faced every challenge together, their love for each other and their family giving them the strength to persevere. Little Zach grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch and wanted nothing more than to work beside his father. He learned quickly and had a natural way with horses that reminded Zachary of his own mother. Rose was quieter but no less passionate, and she developed a love for books and learning that Olivia encouraged by teaching her to read at an early age. Thomas was the wild one, always getting into mischief and making his parents laugh with his antics. When little Zach was 12, Rose was 10, and Thomas was 7, Olivia gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth had been even harder. For a terrifying few hours, Zachary had thought he might lose Olivia, but she had fought through, and both babies were born healthy. Dr. Cross, who was now well into his 70s but still practicing, told them that there should be no more pregnancies, that Olivia's body had been through too much. Zachary agreed immediately, telling Olivia that he would rather have her than a dozen more children. As the children grew, the ranch prospered. Little Zach took on more responsibility, running the day-to-day operations so that Zachary could focus on the business side of things. They hired a few ranch hands to help with the work, good men who were loyal and hardworking. Rose decided she wanted to be a teacher like her mother had once considered, and when she turned 18, she took the position at the White River schoolhouse that Olivia had turned down all those years ago. Thomas was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life, torn between staying on the ranch and seeing more of the world. The twins, Emma and Grace, were inseparable and had inherited their mother's musical talent. They would sing together while doing chores, their voices blending in perfect harmony, and on Sunday evenings, the whole family would gather in the parlor and sing together. Zachary would play the guitar now, the same one Olivia had been holding on the porch that evening when he had asked her to marry him, and Olivia would lead them in song after song, her voice still as beautiful as it had been that first day he heard her humming. One evening, when Zachary was in his early 50s and Olivia was in her late 40s, they sat together on that same porch where he had proposed to her all those years ago. The children were all inside, the older ones helping the younger ones with schoolwork or doing their own chores. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Zachary reached over and took Olivia's hand. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up your dreams of singing, of seeing the world? You have been stuck here on this ranch for almost 30 years. Olivia looked at him in surprise. "Stuck? Zachary York, I have never felt stuck a day in my life since I married you. This ranch, this life, our children, this is not settling for less than my dreams. This is more than I ever dreamed possible. When I came here, I was alone and frightened, and I had nothing. You gave me everything, a home, a family, love. How could I possibly regret any of that? I just want you to be happy. I want you to have everything you deserve. I am happy. I have everything I deserve and more. Do you regret marrying me? Do you wish you had chosen someone else, someone who could give you more children or who was better at ranching? God, no. Olivia, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Marrying you was the smartest decision I ever made. I just worry sometimes that I am not enough for you." She squeezed his hand and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You are more than enough. You are everything. Do you remember that first day when you walked in and found me washing dishes? Of course I remember. I thought someone had broken into my house. And then I heard you humming that song my mother used to sing, and I knew my life was about to change. I was so scared. I had been living in your house for 3 days, and every moment I was terrified that someone would come and throw me out. When you walked through that door, I thought my life was over. But then you were so kind and you said I could stay, and I started to hope that maybe things would be all right after all. I never imagined it would turn out like this, that we would build such a beautiful life together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. After a while, Olivia started to hum that old Irish tune, the one that had brought them together all those years ago. Zachary listened, and his heart swelled with love for this woman who had changed his life so completely. He thought about all the years they had shared, all the joys and sorrows, all the ordinary moments that had added up to an extraordinary life. As the years continued to pass, Zachary and Olivia watched their children grow and start families of their own. Little Zach married a girl from a neighboring ranch, a strong, capable woman named Sarah who fit right into the family. They had 4 children of their own and took over running the ranch when Zachary decided it was time to step back and enjoy his grandchildren. Rose married a lawyer from Tucson, a quiet, intelligent man who supported her teaching and encouraged her to write a book about frontier education. They had 2 daughters and lived in town, but they visited the ranch often. Thomas eventually decided to join the Army, serving for several years before returning to Arizona Territory. He married a widow with 3 children and settled on a small ranch about 20 miles from White River. The twins, Emma and Grace, married brothers from a ranching family to the south, and they lived on adjoining properties so they could remain close. Both had large families, and family gatherings became loud, chaotic, joyful affairs with children and grandchildren running everywhere. Zachary and Olivia became the center of this growing family, the anchor that held everyone together. They had lived good lives, worked hard, loved deeply, and built something that would last beyond them. The ranch that had been empty and sad when Zachary first returned to it was now full of life and laughter, a testament to what 2 people could create when they found each other and refused to let go. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were over 40 people there, children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. They had a big dinner outside under the stars, with long tables set up in the yard and lanterns hanging from the trees. There was music and dancing and endless stories about the old days. Little Zach stood up and gave a toast, thanking his parents for the example they had set, for showing all of them what real love looked like. Later that night, after all the guests had left or gone to bed in various rooms throughout the house and the bunkhouse, Zachary and Olivia took one last walk around the property. They walked hand in hand, moving slowly because their bodies were not as young as they once had been, but their spirits were still strong. 30 years, Olivia said softly. It feels like yesterday and forever all at the same time. I know what you mean. Sometimes I look at you and I still see that young woman humming in my kitchen, washing dishes and completely unaware that I was about to walk in. Other times I look at you and I see every single day we have spent together, every moment written on your beautiful face. We are getting old, Zachary. We are, but we are getting old together, and that makes all the difference. They stopped at the creek that ran through their property, the same creek where wild roses still grew every spring. The moon was full, and its light turned the water to silver. Olivia turned to face Zachary, and even in the moonlight he could see the love shining in her eyes, as bright as it had been on their wedding day. I want you to know, she said seriously, that I have loved every single day of our life together. Even the hard days, even the days when we struggled or fought or worried about money or the children. Every day with you has been a gift. You made me believe in love, in family, in the possibility of happiness. You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go, and you gave me a life more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Zachary pulled her close and kissed her, a long, tender kiss that held 30 years of love and devotion. You saved me, Olivia. I was just existing before you came along, just going through the motions. You brought me back to life. You gave me purpose and meaning and a reason to build something lasting. Everything good in my life came from you. I was humming that song that day you found me. I had been so sad, so lost, and humming my mother's songs was the only thing that gave me comfort. I never imagined that the tune would bring me everything I had ever wanted. Sing it for me now, Zachary said. Sing it like you did that day. So Olivia sang, her voice not as strong as it once had been, but still beautiful, still filled with emotion. She sang the old Irish ballad about the girl waiting for her love to return from the sea, and Zachary listened and remembered the moment he had first heard that tune, the moment his life had changed forever. When she finished, he took her hand, and they walked back to the house together, their home, filled with the echoes of laughter and love and a lifetime of memories. Years later, when Zachary was in his late 60s and Olivia was in her mid-60s, they still lived on the ranch, though little Zach and his family had moved into the main house and built a smaller but comfortable house nearby for Zachary and Olivia. They spent their days doing light chores, playing with their great-grandchildren, and enjoying the peace they had earned through decades of hard work. Their health was generally good, though they had the usual aches and pains of age, and they were content with the quiet rhythm of their lives. On a beautiful spring morning, Olivia woke early and made breakfast for herself and Zachary. She hummed while she worked, the same tunes she had been humming for 40 years, and when Zachary came into the kitchen, he smiled at the familiar sound. "Still humming that old song," he said, kissing her cheek. "It will be in my head until the day I die," she replied cheerfully. "It is part of me now, part of us." They ate breakfast together, talking about their plans for the day. Little Zach was going to bring 2 of the grandchildren over later, and Olivia wanted to teach them how to make bread. Zachary was going to help one of the ranch hands repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. They were simple plans, ordinary plans, but they were happy with their simple, ordinary days. After breakfast, Zachary headed out to work on the fence while Olivia started her preparations for the bread-making lesson. She was humming again, moving around the kitchen with the ease of long practice when she felt a strange pain in her chest. She stopped, pressing her hand to her sternum, thinking perhaps she had just moved too quickly. But the pain intensified and suddenly she could not catch her breath. She tried to call out for help, but no sound came. The last thing she thought as darkness claimed her was that she had been so lucky, so very lucky, to have had such a beautiful life with the man she loved. Zachary found her an hour later when he came back to the house for a drink of water. She was lying on the kitchen floor, the mixing bowl still on the table, flour dusted on her hands. For a terrible moment he thought she had fallen and hurt herself, but when he knelt beside her and felt for a pulse, he found none. She was gone, taken from him in an instant without warning or goodbye. The grief that consumed him was unlike anything he had ever felt. It was a physical pain that made it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to do anything but sit beside her body and hold her hand and wish with everything in him that he could bring her back. Little Zach found them like that, his father kneeling on the floor beside his mother's body, tears streaming down his weathered face. The funeral was large, with people coming from all over the territory to pay their respects. Olivia had touched many lives during her years in White River, and the church was packed with people who wanted to say goodbye. They buried her in the small cemetery on the ranch, near the creek where the wild roses grew. The minister spoke about love and faith and the promise of reunion in heaven, but Zachary barely heard the words. All he could think was that his Olivia was gone, the woman who had changed his life with a simple tune hummed while washing dishes. After the funeral, the family tried to convince Zachary to move into the main house where they could look after him, but he refused. He stayed in the small house he and Olivia had shared, surrounded by her things, by the memories of their life together. He would sit in the rocking chair he had once held their newborn son in, and stare at the empty chair where Olivia used to sit with her sewing or a book. The house felt too quiet without her humming, without the sound of her footsteps or her voice. The family worried about him, but they understood that grief took time. Little Zach visited every day, bringing food and making sure his father ate. Rose came whenever she could, sitting with him and talking about her mother, sharing memories and tears. The grandchildren would visit, and their energy and innocence would briefly pull Zachary out of his sorrow. But at night, alone in the bed he had shared with Olivia for over 40 years, Zachary would lie awake and ache with missing her. He had known that one of them would eventually leave first. That was the price of loving someone, but he had always assumed it would be him. He had never imagined having to live without her, and he did not know how to do it. Weeks passed, and then months. Spring turned to summer and summer to fall. Zachary continued to go through the motions of living, but there was no joy in it anymore. He helped with light tasks around the ranch, played with his grandchildren, ate the meals that were brought to him, but he was just existing, not truly living. One evening in late autumn, almost 6 months after Olivia's death, Zachary walked down to the creek. The wild roses were gone for the season, but he could remember how they looked in the spring, bright and beautiful against the green grass. He sat on the bank and looked up at the stars, the same stars he and Olivia had watched together so many times. "I miss you," he said out loud, not caring if anyone heard him talking to himself. "I miss you so much, Olivia. I do not know how to do this without you. Everything feels empty and wrong. I know I should be grateful for the years we had, and I am, but it does not make missing you any easier." He sat there for a long time, listening to the water running over the rocks, feeling the cool evening air on his face. And then, so softly he thought he might be imagining it, he heard it. Humming. That old Irish tune, the one Olivia had been humming the first day he saw her. He turned, half expecting to see her standing behind him, but there was no one there. Just the sound of humming, carried on the wind, filling the air around him with music. Zachary closed his eyes and listened, and for the first time since Olivia's death, he felt a sense of peace. He did not understand where the music was coming from, whether it was his imagination or something more, but it did not matter. What mattered was that it reminded him of something Olivia had said many times during their marriage, that love was eternal, that it transcended death and time and distance. She had believed that they would be together again someday, and hearing that familiar tune, Zachary chose to believe it too. He stood up slowly, his old bones creaking, and started walking back to the house. The humming followed him, or perhaps it was coming from inside him, from the place in his heart where Olivia still lived. He thought about all the years they had shared, all the love they had built, and he realized that she had not really left him. She was in the house they had made a home together, in the children and grandchildren they had raised, in every corner of the ranch they had built. She was in the songs they had sung and the dreams they had dreamed and the life they had created. Zachary lived for 5 more years after Olivia's death. They were not easy years, and he never stopped missing her, but he found a way to keep living. He spent time with his family, telling them stories about their mother and grandmother, keeping her memory alive. He worked in the garden she had planted, tended the roses by the creek, and every evening he would sit in his rocking chair and play the old guitar and sing the songs she had taught him. When the time finally came, when his heart simply wore out from age and grief and a lifetime of hard work, he died peacefully in his sleep. His family found him the next morning, and they knew immediately that he had gone to be with Olivia. There was a peaceful expression on his face, almost a smile, and they liked to think that she had been there to welcome him home. They buried him beside Olivia in the cemetery by the creek, and the entire family gathered once more to say goodbye. Little Zach, now an old man himself with gray in his hair and grandchildren of his own, stood at his father's grave and told the story of how his parents had met, about the tune his mother had been humming, and how it had made his father fall in love with her completely. They had 43 years together, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. 43 years of love and laughter and hard work and devotion. They built this ranch from almost nothing and turned it into something that will last for generations. They raised 5 children who are raising children of their own, and the legacy they left is not just this land or these buildings. It is love. They taught us what it means to truly love someone, to build a life together, to face hardships and celebrate joys as a team. They showed us that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every single day. And they chose each other every single day until death parted them. Now they are together again, and I like to think that somewhere she is humming that old Irish tune, and he is listening with that same expression he used to get, like she was the most precious thing in the world to him. Because she was. She always was. The family sang together at the graveside, all the old songs that Zachary and Olivia had loved. Their voices rose into the clear Arizona sky, carrying over the land that had been their home, the land that would continue to be home to their descendants for generations to come. And if the wind seemed to carry a melody of its own, a haunting Irish tune about love and loss and eternal reunion, no one mentioned it, but everyone felt it, a reminder that true love never really dies. It just changes form, living on in the hearts of those left behind. Years later, when the children were old and their children had children, the story of Zachary and Olivia York became part of family legend. New generations would hear about the cowboy who had come home to find a woman humming in his kitchen and had fallen in love with her completely because of a tune his mother used to sing. They would hear about the life that couple had built, about the love that had sustained them through decades of challenges and triumphs, about the legacy they had left that went far beyond land or money. The ranch stayed in the family, passing from generation to generation, each one adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Zachary and Olivia had laid. The house was expanded and modernized over the years, but certain things remained the same. The old guitar still hung on the wall, and family members would take it down and play the old songs. The rocking chair where Zachary had rocked his babies, and then his grandbabies, was carefully preserved and used for each new generation. And by the creek, the wild roses continued to bloom every spring, a living memorial to a love that had transformed 2 lonely people into a family that would last forever. The cemetery on the ranch grew as the years passed, but Zachary and Olivia's graves remained at the center, side by side for eternity, just as they had been in life. Their headstones were simple, marked only with their names, dates, and a single line that little Zach had chosen. They chose each other every day. Visitors to the cemetery, whether family members or curious outsiders who had heard the story, would often pause at those graves and smile, imagining the cowboy and the woman with the auburn hair, young and in love, building a life together in the wild beauty of the Arizona territory. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, people swore they could hear it, a woman's voice humming an old Irish tune, and if they listened very carefully, they could hear a man's deep voice joining in, harmonizing perfectly with hers. The ranch hands would smile and go about their business, not frightened by the ghostly music but comforted by it, taking it as a sign that love really could last forever, that the best stories never really end, they just continue in different ways. The tale of Zachary York and Olivia Lawson became more than just a family story. It became part of the history of White River itself. The town grew and changed over the years, evolving from a rough frontier settlement into a thriving community. But old-timers would still tell the story to newcomers, about the rancher and his wife who had helped build the town through their hard work and generosity, who had raised 5 children who became pillars of the community, who had shown everyone what true partnership looked like. The schoolhouse where Rose had taught bore a plaque in honor of Olivia, recognizing her influence on education in the territory, even though she had never officially been a teacher. The church where Zachary and Olivia had married held annual gatherings for families, inspired by the strong family bonds the Yorks had exemplified. And the ranching community would point to the York Ranch as an example of what could be built through dedication, intelligent management, and genuine love for the land and the life. But beyond all the public recognition, beyond the plaques and the stories and the legend, the most important legacy of Zachary and Olivia York was the simple truth they had lived, that love was the foundation of everything worthwhile. They had started with nothing but a chance meeting and a familiar tune, and from that, they had built a life rich in meaning and connection. They had shown that love was not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about choosing each other every day, about working together through challenges, about building something lasting that would benefit not just themselves but generations yet to come. As the sun set over the Arizona landscape, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold, the York Ranch settled into another peaceful evening. Children played in the yard while their parents worked on the never-ending tasks of ranch life. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, and the smell of dinner cooking drifted on the evening air. Someone was playing a guitar on the porch, practicing the old songs, and someone else was singing along, their voice carrying across the land. It was a scene that had played out countless times over the decades, and it would play out countless more times in the years to come. The details changed, the faces were different, but the essential elements remained the same: family, hard work, love, and music. Always music, those old Irish tunes that connected the present to the past, that reminded everyone where they had come from and why it mattered. And somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond this one, Zachary York held Olivia Lawson York in his arms and listened to her hum that old familiar tune, the one that had brought them together in the first place, the one that had become the soundtrack of their life together. They were young again, or perhaps age no longer mattered, and they had forever to enjoy the love they had built, and the knowledge that their legacy continued in the world they had left behind. It was a good life they had lived, a life full of purpose and meaning and deep, abiding love. It was the kind of life that mattered, the kind of life that changed the world in small but significant ways, the kind of life that proved love was the most powerful force in existence. And it had all started with a simple moment: a cowboy walking into his kitchen and hearing a woman hum a tune his mother used to sing, a moment that had changed 2 lives forever and created a legacy that would endure for generations. The story of Zachary and Olivia York was finished, complete, a testament to what 2 people could create when they found each other and held on tight. Their love story had a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it also had something more, a continuation in the lives of everyone they had touched, everyone they had loved, everyone who came after them. And that, perhaps, was the greatest achievement of all, not just to love and be loved, but to create a foundation strong enough that others could build upon it, reaching heights the original builders never imagined possible. As the last light faded from the Arizona sky, and the stars began to emerge one by one, the ranch settled into night. Lights glowed warmly in the windows. Families gathered together, and in the distance, the sound of humming drifted on the wind, eternal and unchanging. A reminder that some things, the important things, the true things, last forever.